Now, you said I was a great mom before. I got yelled at pretty heavily before I got on this podcast with you, because apparently I did not buy the right ice cream. So there may be a 6-year-old and a newly turned 4-year-old who are very upset with me at the moment. I'm going to try to redeem myself. Wish me luck. It may not go that well.
They're already turning into great negotiators, I can tell.
I said to my daughter, I'm like, when can you join me? I'm ready. Come on, join me.
Benztown President Dave Chachi Dennis loves radio and all of his radio friends.
Hey, Chachi.
Hey, everybody.
Because Chachi loves everybody.
My next guest, she has held many prestigious programming and executive roles, including assistant program director for the legendary WOR in New York City. She was the vice president for Greenstone Media and the executive producer of The Joan Hamburg Show. She's been named to Radio Inc. magazine's most influential women in radio every year since 2014. I think that's 9 years in a row. Talkers Magazine awarded her the prestigious Judy Jarvis Memorial Award. She's a recipient of Hofstra University's George M. Estabrook Distinguished Service Award, and the Multicultural Media and Correspondence Association has named her a Shiros in Media. And in 2019, she was inducted into the WRHU Radio Hall of Fame. Please welcome the Executive Vice President of the Weiss Agency, Heather Cohen. Heather, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. Your reputation is amongst the best in the industry. And not only do talent love you, but executives love you as well. And you give so much to non-for-profits and so many different organizations, which we'll get into in a few minutes, throughout the industry. I just want to thank you really for just being a bastion of radio, for representing amazing talent and just doing so many great things to help us all really just rise above. So that's my piece about you. And now I want to get into all about Heather.
Well, I can't thank you enough. That is super kind of you. And by the way, right back at you. How much do you do for the industry? I mean, beyond. And you support everyone, and you are kind and do it with a smile, and very grateful that you are in our world.
Well, thank you. But when we get to the numbers, you're like on 3 or 4 times more boards than I am. Tell me a little bit about...
You learn to say no once in a while. I'm working on it. I'm trying. Don't follow me.
Tell me a little bit about growing up.
Growing up, so I was born in Queens in New York, and we lived in a very small apartment in Little Neck, myself, my amazing parents, my little brother, and moved to Long Island when I was 10. And I'm a very blessed individual. I have an incredible family, a wonderfully supportive family. I had a really great childhood, and I was given many opportunities, and I know how fortunate that I am to, have a great education. Went to Hofstra University, which I love so much, and I'm still very involved with Hofstra, which really helps support where I am today in the radio industry and the audio industry. But I've had incredible people in my life, from family to friends to mentors, who have always propped me up, supported me, taught me things I didn't know. I'm a very grateful person. Did you have an interest in media early on? I did. I've shared this story a few times, so forgive me, but I remember I had a Strawberry Shortcake radio. It was a Strawberry Shortcake AM radio. I actually still have one in my office. Robin Bertolucci from KFI found one on eBay and gave it to me, and I'm thrilled. Cool is that? And I can see, just to paint a picture, behind Heather, behind her desk, is several shelves full of beautiful vintage radios. I can't see the Strawberry Shortcake one, but I can see a few behind you that are incredibly cool. Yeah, I'm a radio girl, and it's in my blood, and it will always remain in my blood, and I have to have fun with it. So I do surround myself with things that I love and enjoy. But I was 6 years old, and I was at recess. And of course, when you're 6, you don't quite understand top of the hour and bottom of the hour. But my uncle Al D'Amico was a news anchor on WOR. Oh, wow. So I remember I was wearing my Mary Janes, very cool. I thought they were very special, got, one new pair of shoes a year. And I would go out during recess with my friends, and certain recesses, Uncle Al was on the radio reading the news. And other recesses, I didn't understand why he wasn't on the radio reading the news. But I was definitely the weird kid listening to a lot of radio. And of course, I listened to music radio and tried to win contests and, was certainly recording myself on cassette tapes and pretending that I was a DJ or a news anchor or a host. But I actually started listening to talk radio as a very young child.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So you've always been really interested in the world and world events.
Oh, always. I as a kid, I wanted to be on the radio. I think I was fortunate enough to have a high school radio station. On Long Island, there was a radio station in the basement of a wonderful high school, and I started there at 14. But, I was playing Pearl Jam, and I was playing Metallica, and learned really quickly, hey, I don't think I should be on the radio. I'm very nervous. I'm happy if I can cue something up and, hit the mark on time. But then I went to Hofstra. My mother was a professor at Hofstra. And tuition remission was a wonderful thing. Let's put it that way.
I'm sure that's certainly a great perk.
Absolutely. So I was fortunate to go there, and I literally ran into the general manager of the radio station, Bruce Avery, God rest his soul. He passed away last year. We literally ran into each other, and he told me about the radio station. I told him, well, I actually did high school radio, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, and I loved it. And he said, well, we're moving into this beautiful new facility. Help us move. Let me introduce you to people. And I'd love to get you involved in the radio station. I'm planning the first ever training class. We'll teach everything from FCC rules and regulations to, day-to-day operations. And I went into Bruce's first ever training class, and it completely changed my life.
And from that moment, sounds like you were obviously interested at a very early age, but getting into Bruce's class, you were cemented now, this is the path you're going to go down.
Yeah, well, even at that time, WRHU was this remarkable station with students and community volunteers. And as you know, WRHU is, in my opinion, and I think many in the industry will echo, possibly the greatest university radio station in America. 4 Marconi Awards in the last 8 years.
Jeez, I did not know that. That's incredible.
Oh, and if you look at the footprint that Hofstra students have had in our industry, Hofstra radio students are everywhere. And I'm so happy that my phone rings pretty often with people saying, we know how good these students are coming out of the Hofstra University Lawrence Herbert School of Communication and the WRHU program. There are over 300 students in that program, and we want to hire them. So there are Hofstra students across our entire industry. And I think, I'm not sure if this year's numbers have come out, but I know from LinkedIn media professionals, I believe Hofstra is either number 2 or number 3 in America.
So speaking of Hofstra and the influence that you have in the industry, I literally was just at the Rams game a few days ago with our friends at Compass, with Paul Gregory, and Lyanne Souza, who works for Compass and is one of their account executives, was there as well. And she was speaking so highly of you and Hofstra and wanted me to make sure I said hello to you.
She is. Thank you for doing that. She is amazing. In fact, I just saw her about 2 weeks ago on Zoom. So I'm the new president of the Hofstra University Alumni Organization Board. And Lyanne is now a part of the overall alumni organization representing WRHU. She is a rock star, a shining star in our industry. She was on the Compass affiliate relations team and has done so much good work and is so supportive of also many organizations in the industry. And she just moved over to sales, and they are so fortunate to have her. Truly a shining star. Everyone should watch her.
I am so impressed with what you do, and I think young people are really the lifeblood of this industry. And one of the things that she had told me are a lot of the media buyers are her age, And I think, unfortunately, as an industry, and we can talk about this a bit more as we get into this, but we've not done a great job of bringing up new people and really working with them and training them. And it's great to see shining stars like Lyanne come in and really work with media buyers and teach them what radio is all about and why we're such an impactful medium and why we're so efficient and why ultimately we drive great results for advertisers.
Oh, I couldn't agree more with you. And it's so sad. I was so fortunate coming up. I did an internship at WRHU where my uncle was a news anchor, and then started there the day after I graduated. But we don't have many internships between companies cutting back for legal reasons, reasons that I fully understand, but also COVID hit. And even, right now, it is challenging getting interns into stations, into studios. I see that we are having some more at this point, which is very encouraging, but we don't have that farm team. We don't even necessarily have the farm team of talent. We certainly don't have the promotions van with, 5 or 10 or 15 different promotions people.
Sure.
That's where we grabbed people. We grabbed interns. That's how I started. And unfortunately, that really does not exist right now. I think people will try to change that, and certain companies are doing what they can, but it's a fraction of what we had before. And we need to utilize, there's a very good organization, IBS, I believe it's the Intercollegiate Broadcast. I believe that's
yes.
what it is.
Very familiar.
And a young man, Sean Novat, who runs... he's on Long Island. He runs Nassau Community College's radio station. He's their general manager. He's one of the 2 or 3 people that run that broadcast system. And that's all the colleges and university students and even high school students that have radio stations throughout America. We need to figure out how to embrace them and the few other organizations that have high school and college, university students where this is what they want to do. They want to be our future audio engineers. They want to be our future hosts. They want to be our future producers and programmers and salespeople. We need to figure out as an industry, how do we bring all these young people in and embrace them, because they do not have the same opportunities that we had as kids.
I 100%, I completely agree. And anything that we can do to help you with that mission and what you're doing and helping people like Lyanne, let us know, because it's really nice to see that. And I think it will be, it's also, incredibly important for us, I think, in terms of the growth of our industry and the continued importance of radio as a medium. In talking about young, you get your first job out of Hofstra, working as an executive producer for the Joan Hamburg show. So you've started really as a young age listening to your uncle on your Strawberry Shortcake AM radio. And then from there you go to the high school and you work at the high school station for a few years where you were on air, but then also did some work behind the scenes, programming and so forth.
That was I was on air in my high school station. At Hofstra, yes, I was on air. I did the morning show. I did the Jazz Cafe, Classics from Hofstra, Newsline. I really enjoyed doing news, but I learned that I didn't have those talents. I never felt that I was entertaining enough or informed enough or quite, talented enough in that area, but I was pretty good behind the scenes. I was very organized. I've always been very organized, and I love supporting great talent, which is, probably why I ended up as an agent 16 years ago. But I never needed to be the talent or wanted to be the talent, but I did want to support great talent. So I was very fortunate that at Hofstra, I was assistant news director, program director, and station manager for 2 years. So I really had incredible opportunities. And yes, I interned at WRHU my last semester, and I started literally the day after graduation. I was, I believe, their first female and non-union board op. Double whammy, let's put it that way. And I was scared. I mean, I was thrown into it, and WRHU had a pretty significant network at the time.
Sure.
So I was very fortunate, and I became a producer, I guess, about 3 months into it.
That's a quick rise. I mean, to become an executive producer for Joan Hamburg, I mean, that's a big deal.
Oh, Joan, I just had dinner with Joan about 2 weeks ago.
How's she doing?
Oh, she's amazing. She's at WABC in New York. She is just, to me, still the queen of New York radio. And there's no one who is better connected and gives back more than Joan. And I'm so grateful to her for everything that she gave to me and taught me. But look, I was 21. I don't think she necessarily wanted me as her producer, but I was in the building. And David Bernstein was the program director at the time. And I remember he said, Heather, okay, you're on probation. Let's not talk about your age. Maybe you should wear a blazer. And you're on probation. Let's see how this works. We're going to give this a few months. Now, of course, since then, he said, oh, it wasn't a probation. I made that up. But at the time, I thought I was on probation. And at the time, we said the word Rolodex. So instead of contacts, I didn't have a Rolodex. I didn't know every publicist in New York. I didn't have every celebrity's phone number. Eventually, after years of doing it, I got to that point, certainly, but with Joan's help. And we became very close very quickly, and she became another mom in my life and helped guide me so much, and forever grateful. But I really learned from the best. And at that time in New York, if you were a major celebrity, if you were a politician, if you were anyone, any A-list fill in the blank, you really came on Howard, you came on Imus, and you came on Joan Hamburg.
Wow. I mean, talking about being thrown into the deep end. So you start this position with her. Was there anyone there to train you other than Joan?
Yeah, honestly, I was so fortunate. I mean, we were a family at WOR, and we went through a lot together. And, we went through 9/11 together. We went through everything together. It was a very special place. I had many mentors there and many people who wanted to see me do well. Natalie Betos-Vaca is the morning show producer on WOR for Len Berman and Michael Riedel. I started as Natalie's intern on Rambling with Gambling. She was the morning show executive producer, one of the greatest producers on the planet. And man, did she throw me into it. And at the time, by the way, I was splicing tape. I was very good at splicing. If you wanted to cut out some sibilants, give me a razor blade. I could do that for you. But what I learned at the time, I showed up first. I was the last there. I worked hard. I wasn't necessarily the smartest for sure, but I worked really hard and I tried to make everybody's lives easier. And they allowed me to do that. And I became part of the family, I think, as a result.
It's incredibly impressive to get your first real gig in New York City, market number one, and then to be producing. I started producing as well, and it was for a nighttime show down in San Diego. And that's a lot of work, but we played music. I mean, we still had 10, 11 songs an hour. It wasn't a ton of content at the end of the day. But when you're producing for a talk show, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of content that you're preparing for guests, the callers. I mean, you were really hustling. And to do that right out of school is really impressive, especially for such a high-profile talent in such a high-profile city.
Well, again, David Bernstein believed in me. Honestly, everyone there was so good to me. I mean, Rick Buckley, Joe Bellotta, we miss them so much. Everyone was so good to me, from Eloise Maroney, the head of operations, to Judy Pash, the head of HR and beyond. There were a lot of people that allowed me to learn and to grow and to do more and prop me up. And I think that's why I feel like a tremendous responsibility to make sure that I do that and help younger people grow in this industry, especially because it's so much more difficult than when I got into it.
I'm wondering if working as an executive producer for Joan, any high-profile talent, but Joan obviously being incredibly high-profile in New York City, helps set you up to be a great agent because of what you learned in terms of dealing with the talent, communicating with the talent, getting the most out of the talent. And I don't want you to go there now, but I do want to get into that in a few minutes because it's an interesting trajectory and kind of a fascinating potential stepping stone to where you are now. But before we go there, there's a tease for you. Tell me about when they decided to make you the APD for WOR.
That was a tough day because there were cuts at the station and the program director position was eliminated. And it was somebody that was a tremendous mentor of mine, Maurice Tunick. I'm still friends with him and his family, his son. His son, by the way, is in the voiceover business.
Okay.
Yes. So they eliminated the entire position.
Wow.
And that was terrifying to me. But I was given an opportunity that day to be an APD. I moved into that program director's office. I was handed 6 books of Arbitron, the last 6 books of Arbitron. That's what it was, of course, back in the day. I didn't know how to read ratings. I knew a little bit here and there, certainly from asking questions and Maurice being a great mentor, but I was not extrapolating ratings, numbers, let's put it that way. So I had to really look at some of my big brothers in the business to help teach me how to do that. But it was a stunning day for me because the general manager, a wonderful man, Bob Bruno, called me in and he said, okay, this is your new role and you're going to help because there are quite a few contracts up in the next 2 months. I think it was about 13 contracts that were up in the next 2 months, and he wanted me very involved in the negotiations.
In a lot of ways, they're having you act as the PD, it sounds like.
It was 2 of us. It was Scott Lakefield and myself. I think on the negotiation side, I was doing probably a little bit more of that. Scott is a brilliant, brilliant production guy. And it was eye-opening because I didn't know what I was doing. And all of a sudden, I'm dealing with all these agents from CAA and William Morris, fill in the blank. I think it was really William Morris mainly back then and others. And I had no idea what I was doing, but I have to say, they were very good to me, from Bob to Jerry, who ran sales, Crowley, who's at Salem, to, Rick and Joe. They said, go run with it. You've got, what are you, mid-20s at this point? I was 29.
You're 29 yeah. And you're
28 or 29.
And yeah. They hand you the keys. I get it that there's someone else there helping you to some degree, but you're negotiating now. I'm sure some of these are certainly high 6-figure, low 7-figure deals that you're negotiating. That's pretty intense.
I made a lot of mistakes, but they were incredible, like that they gave me this opportunity. It was, and I worked with Bob closely on a lot of this and Scott on some of them as well. But I became very intrigued with contracts and negotiations and how things played out. And, some of them got quite heated. Some were, lovely, and some got quite heated because they knew, the agents knew they were dealing with somebody that really had no experience. But it definitely helped me, develop a desire and an interest and a passion, again, for supporting great talent, fighting for them, and also doing deals that are fair for both sides. What an incredible story. Do you have one that sticks out? You don't have to name the talent, but where it got heated? Anything where you're just like... Yes. Yeah. Okay. This was a very uncomfortable. This is the truth. I was at the NAB, and I believe it was the Vegas NAB. I was on a floor, tremendous floor. Right. And one of the agents was not happy with how a negotiation was going, and he got in my face. And a fellow agent of his had to physically get in between us because he was afraid he was going to hurt me. Oh my gosh! What did you do? I was scared, but I stood. I didn't. Maybe I flinched, but I don't think I flinched. I think I'm very tough. No, fortunately, there was another person there who was in their right mind and basically pulled him away and screamed at him and said, "What are you doing?" But yeah, it was a very strange interaction. Again, this is years ago. I appreciate your chutzpah. It's incredibly impressive because I think a lot of people, including myself, may back down from that and go, you know what, maybe this isn't right for me. But you're like, hey, no,
going to stand up to this and I'm going to go down this path and negotiate, which I find super impressive. And I want to talk about that more, especially when we get into when you joined working with Eric and so forth. So you're APD, and then you're asked to join Greenstone Media and become a vice president of programming. So now, and that's just a little over a year later. So now you're 30 and then you're the VP of Greenstone Media. That's a huge jump. How did that come to be?
They reached out we were talking for 6 months, honestly. And I did not want to leave WOR. I loved WOR. I still love WOR. And honestly, it's a pleasure to represent, quite a few personalities at WOR today. It's still part of my deep roots and family. They really wanted a female talk programmer. And sadly, there were very few at the time. There are more today, but not enough. And I would still say very few, which is troubling.
Yeah, I agree.
And I know that they called some of our friends that, anyone in the industry could name when you talk about talk radio. And some of our friends turned it down, and they kept calling. And they really made me an offer that was truly, financially and also just from a learning experience, it was impossible to refuse, even though I was so happy and grateful for where I was before. But I really turned to my mentors, and I turned to, I had a lot of big brothers that I turned to, and I said, what should I do? And they were honest with me and said, look, this may not work. It's a great concept. It may not be the right time, but you're about to get a PhD. Go get your PhD. If it doesn't work, you'll get another job, but go get your PhD and really learn about network radio and really learn, how to be a boss. And I had to take, after a period of time, I had to take the opportunity for myself and for my husband and just for my own learning. I love to learn. I love to learn every day. If I don't learn something every day, I'm not happy. So I jumped, and the people there were incredible, and this was not a political network, despite what, some personalities in America, they called it Air America on estrogen. No, this was a lifestyle talk, news, issues of the day. That was the content. This was not political. But the timing was challenging and very hard to put a specific show next to another talk show that may be highly political or highly polarizing.
What was your day-to-day in terms of Greenstone versus when you were the APD at WOR?
Well, I think it was always about supporting talent and being there for talent and dealing with any issues. But here, because we had 2 studios, which I think was part of the issue. We had studios in LA, studios in New York, not the easiest way to launch a network. And I joined 6 months in. They had already launched without a head of programming. They launched, they had a consultant, they had somebody who was overseeing programming in LA, but 6 months I was talking to them. So the lineup was already set. There, I felt a little bit more like it was triage. At WOR, it was, a pretty well-established, a super well-established station, a very well-established lineup, although we had some major changes for sure while I was there. But there it was, even though it was a very busy day, I felt like Greenstone was, okay, we're building a brand, we're starting from scratch, we have a lot of naysayers, and some of this content probably isn't right and needs to either be adjusted or, I don't want to say fixed, but, it needed to change. It
Sure.
definitely needed to change. But again, great people behind it, amazing people behind it, and just, right concept, maybe not the right time.
Did you spend more time on the road, I'm assuming, when you were at...
Yes, I was bi-coastal, which is how I met my incredible boss, Eric Weiss. So our friend Gary Krantz invited me to a Westwood One dinner. It was at a radio and records conference that, of course, our friend Erica Farber was running. And Gary said, hey, Dennis Miller is launching into syndication. Why don't you come? You're really going to enjoy it. Come to this dinner. It'll be like 35 people. And I'm like, cool. I'd love to meet Dennis Miller. And I knew some people that I was crazy about, like Grace Blazer would be there. I was like, yes, I'm in. Thank you, Gary. So I sit down next to Eric Weiss. Now, in my very brief time in programming at WOR and Greenstone, I really got to know most of the agents that you could name in the audio space at the time.
Sure.
At the time. And I knew Eric's name. I knew he represented Casey Kasem. I knew he represented Bob Kingsley. We miss both of them, of course. I knew he had this incredible reputation, but I never spoke to him. And we never did anything together. We never negotiated. We never talked.
He wasn't the agent chewing you out at the NAB floor in Vegas.
Most definitely not, and I would never work that. So Eric, I sat next to him, and I remember George Hiltzik.
Oh yeah, I remember George.
He was at NS Beanstalk at the time. He was across from me. Grace was diagonally across. And there was Eric, and I knew he repped Kid Kelly and John and Ken. Like, he had this great reputation. And he was very kind. Like, you could just look into somebody's eye. Like, you have kind eyes. You just know if you're dealing with a kind person. He had kind eyes. And he's like, look, you're bi-coastal. I was living at the not so lovely Hilton Universal Hotel every other week. I mean, maybe it wasn't that bad, but
I get it.
Is what it is. Yeah. So I was there every other week. And actually, I've stayed at much worse places. But,
and you can take the tram to Universal City Walk.
So I literally was living out of an armoire, and he's like, look, my sister's in the business with me. I'd love to introduce you to my wife. I'd love to introduce you to my friend Harold. Come over to my office. It's kind of cool. It's the old Charles Lawton estate. The office is this old mansion over the cliff in Pacific Palisades where Marilyn Monroe used to take acting lessons for years.
It's spectacular.
It has a room. Yeah, of course. It's a very, very special, unique place. And he said, come over, meet my sister Andrea. Like, he was just really kind. And I would say, probably a few months into our friendship, he said, look, Heather, because Eric, of course, as you know, he was general counsel of Westwood One. He was vice chair of the board of Premier, one of the 5 guys that did that Premier sale,
sure,
Premier Clear Channel sale. And he just said, look, I'd like you to consider something. He said, maybe, down the line, you should consider joining me as an agent. I've always wanted a New York office. I really can't take on clients at the time. I'm kind of maxed out, and I'd love to add somebody in New York, and I think you're the person. And I used some very bad language that I will, of course, not repeat with you today, but I told him how crazy he was, and, no, you don't want me, and here's why you don't want me. And he's like, no, I want you. You love this business. You love the talent. You enjoy the managers. You want to, talk to people, and you care, and I'll teach you what you don't know. So he did say, he's like, look, I know the network business. I'm rooting for your network, but you're going to run out of money in 6 months, and you're going to close your doors. And remember at the time we had those planners, those paper planners. I forget what they were called exactly, but those large daily planners.
Totally.
We still do, but yeah, we all use our phone. So I looked back, and I believe it was either 6 months and 2 days or 6 months and 3 days later, I had the terrible task of letting go 59 people.
Oh, man.
And it was 2007, Chachi. Had it been 2008, it would have been a different story. But it was 2007. So my phone rang. I was extremely fortunate. And some of our friends called that day. I thought, I'm going to end up in the smallest market, and I'll have to leave my family and leave New York, and it's going to break my heart. But I was so, so fortunate because the phone rang several times that day. There were still jobs, and Eric called, and he said, okay, it's time. And now I'm an agent. I guess I'm a professional negotiator. And I was like, well, thank you, Eric, but so I think I may be getting some other offers. So and he's like, you've got to be kidding. I'm like, well, it's true. Here's how brilliant my boss is. He's like, I have this place in Mexico. You should go there for a few days and think about your options. That's what he actually said to me. So guess what? I went to Mexico.
It's a great negotiation. You got a vacation out of it.
I barely left the condo, but I talked to these wonderful people that, did want to bring me on at the time. And they're all friends of mine today. And I'm super, again, like so fortunate and thankful for them. But I wanted to join Eric. I knew it was the right thing. It felt right. He at that point already felt like a big brother to me. And I trusted him. And I just felt like he'll teach me what I don't know, but I love talent and I want to fight for talent. So that's what happened. So that was 2007. And I joined him in September, 3 weeks later.
What an incredibly cool story on so many levels. But let's go back. So you're in Cabo, in Eric's condo.
Yes.
And you're fielding calls to program stations. I'm guessing some notable stations. Can you mention any of those? Or
actually, they weren't necessarily stations. I mean, sure, I don't mind mentioning. I mean, at the time, Erica Farber called. There was an opening at Radio and Records. And Sirius XM had an opening to program one of their main channels. And Chris Olivero, who we all love, of course, Chris called and had a position, and I forget if it was new media or digital, but I think it might have still been new media at the time. And I was very grateful. And there were actually, a few other people who were like, hey, we should probably talk.
And are you making like a pros and cons list of these different gigs? How are you sorting that in your mind? Because those are all incredibly cool opportunities.
In my mind, it was, hey, all of these will keep me in New York. I don't have to leave my family.
Right.
And to me, like that was first and foremost. I was terrified to be. I mean, really, I view what I do. I view myself as an entrepreneur, and I was terrified. I was so scared, but there was something about what Eric told me about his company and his clients and the type of clients that he enjoyed bringing on and his passion for it. He sold me. He really just sold me, and it felt right. And again, I went to, some of my big brothers and big sisters in the industry at that time, more big sisters. And I asked for some advice, and they said, try this out. Believe in yourself. Build something up. He's a great guy. All the opportunities were great. I was fortunate, but Eric's reputation is stellar. And people just, to
be able to have a mentor of that stature let's face it, it's a incredibly nuanced business. You really need to know. I think it's difficult for agents. You mentioned some of the bigger agencies, CAA or William Morris, to really kind of understand what it is that we do. It's more nuanced. And I think it's no mistake why you guys are so successful, because no one knows the space better than Eric. Certainly you mentioned him being one of the forefathers of syndication and doing the deal and selling Premiere to J-Corp for, I want to think, it was like
it was J-Corp, exactly.
$280 million deal or something. I mean, it was gigantic. I can't remember the number, but it was millions upon millions of dollars. And so obviously with Casey and Bob, I mean, he really knew it. And for him to take a chance on you certainly had a phenomenal career, and you were racing through space in a rocket ship. But that's also a pretty big jump to go from programming a network and a radio station to now negotiating big deals for marquee talent. You had some of that experience at WOR, but now you're really doing it like day in and day out, which is, I think, impressive on a lot of levels.
I really thought he was nuts. I was like, what is wrong with him? Go get somebody more qualified. but I think we really did have that brother-sister bond. Like his kids are my nephews. I mean, we are. His wife is my sister. We are family, and I felt that immediately. And you can't replace that. If you ask me, I have the best boss on the planet, and I'm not saying that because he's going to listen to this. He better listen to this. But I'm not saying that. I'm saying that because it's true. It's true. He is kind and good, and taught me for years. So patient.
Day one, you're now at the Weiss Agency. What does he have you do? Does he immediately say, "All right, here's your clients," or did you study alongside him for a while?
It's a few things. Actually, Erica Farber and Mike McVeigh brought me on to do some consulting projects for their companies. So I was So in my first year, I helped Erica put together her talk conference that first year. So that helped me in terms of bringing on a client. I helped Mike McVeigh, who, of course, is your dear friend as well, on his work with his syndication company and, on the talk radio properties and some music like Mark McGrath. We work with Donny Osmond, John Sally, we did a show with. So it at the very beginning, and those were part of the Weiss Agency, at the very beginning, I was also consulting some companies, but I started bringing on my individual clients. The great majority are still with me today. I'm so happy to say. And I love seeing how they have just continued to grow and blossom. I mean, my clients become my babies. They become part of my family. They know they're my babies. And they are deeply a part of my family and the Weiss Agency family. But, look, at the very beginning, did I make mistakes? Of course I made mistakes. Eric was so incredible in that he's like, look, here, Heather, here are the mistakes that I made, and I don't want you to make the same mistakes. You'll make some of them, but he spent years training me and sharing stories of, this is something that I would have done differently had I had started over again or done it today. So that was invaluable, learning from the things that he sees as mistakes. This has been a wonderful education, but I hope that I have the same patience that he does. I don't think that I do, but he really took, several years in training me, I have to say. And I still go to him if there is something that I get stuck on, or, a week really doesn't go by where I don't feel like I need his advice on something. I think maybe 2 weeks, but he's always there for me, and he always has wonderful advice, and we talk things through, and it's really an amazing relationship.
Tell me more about your day-to-day now at the Weiss Agency. Like, walk me through from when you get up to you turn your computer off for the day.
Okay, so I do a ton of listening. I watch very little television, as you can imagine. I listen to so much audio. So people are like, "Oh, didn't you see that?" No. Unless one of my clients, which several do, of course, television, but unless it's a TV thing, no. I'm listening to their audio, and that might be radio, it might be podcasts, it might be streaming. So I'm an early riser. I tend to rise around 6, maybe before. And audio starts at the beginning of the day. I want to listen to my clients as frequently as I possibly can. But my day, every day I'm speaking to market managers. I'm speaking to, the general counsel of X company. I'm speaking to my talent. Every day there is somebody who is getting hired, or someone that I am pitching, or someone that may unfortunately be getting terminated, and we have to focus on getting them back to work. There's a lot of conversations with, the heads of programming of every company that you and I can name, but my world has certainly expanded. So, it used to be that I was dealing with the iHearts and the Cumuluses and the Odysseys and the Beasleys and the Hubbards and, et cetera, and networks. But now it's Amazon. Now it could be Apple. It could be Spotify. The world has very much changed in terms of who I'm speaking to. I've had to reinvent myself, but I love it. I love new challenges and learning new things and doing new creative deals. So my day to day, was probably 2 market managers, 2 attorneys, 3 attorneys, several on-air personalities in every format. That's what's cool. We have, a few people in almost every format. So that keeps it interesting, because I don't want to put, many people up for the same job. I want to keep it to a certain group in each format. And it's fun because I get to play in the country sandbox and the talk sandbox and the sports sandbox. And, before this call, I'm texting with Fred Toucher from the Sports Hub in Boston. And, tomorrow I'm talking to Nick Cannon and Angela Yee. And it just, every day is something different. And I think looking at every format in our business, it just keeps it interesting. It keeps it fun. It keeps it unique. And I like that not every single one of our clients are on-air talent. We have a handful of upper managers. And, something that was really fun this past year was, Lee Harris, Mornings at 1010 wins for almost 30 years. And, we both love that station and we both love the management at that station and in that cluster. But Lee was given an opportunity to go over to News Nation in management. And kind of just a dream come true for him, even though he loved his day job, but just a fun time to reinvent himself and learn something new and manage other personalities and technology, which is something that he's great at. So for me, it's just enjoyable being creative. And I'm finding that companies I've used this word many times, we all use this word, but I'm finding that companies over the past few years have more empathy and more creativity.
Interesting.
And yes,
that's
and
good.
I am grateful and appreciative, and I always try to be the same. And my goal is to find, a compromise and a deal that is good for everyone involved, because I want there to be a next deal and a deal after that and a deal after that. I'm also finding, look, this is a challenging year. There have been some exceptions, but, overall, I'm finding when there are difficult things to do that the companies, try to handle it with kindness.
Do you find, and by the way, it's great to hear that. Thank you so much for sharing it. Do you find it different negotiating between a new media company versus a legacy media company? Is there a different strategy there? Do they handle the negotiations differently?
It's interesting because, you and I, we like radio runs through our blood, like our blood. This is who we are. We eat it, we speak it, we breathe it. This is just us. So there are times where I may be dealing with, a streaming company and, I may not be speaking to somebody that came up at a radio station or a radio network and, doesn't necessarily use the same terminology, but they used other terminology and I learned from them, and that's a good thing. Sometimes deals may take a little bit longer as a result, but no, it's all been fairly positive. Again, like there's been a few things that I'm using as learning experiences for sure. I think we all do. But in terms of the negotiations, again, the attorneys may not come from a media background necessarily at some places. So maybe it just takes a little bit longer, but everybody's trying to achieve the same goal.
Do you find yourself in some ways being almost like a psychologist or life coach or career coach for your talent, your clients?
I wish that I would have taken more psychology classes. I mean, sure. And sometimes, by the way, it's for management as well. Yes, because life is hard and this business is hard and this business is challenging. And, I had to tell somebody yesterday that their position was going away, it was being eliminated, and they did nothing wrong. And the company holds them in the highest regard. It is just the climate that we're in. And look, I'm very optimistic for next year. Maybe I'm too optimistic, perhaps, but I am optimistic. It's a time where we have to watch our words and understand that the other person is probably going through something incredibly challenging. And I try to put myself in other people's shoes. And honestly, sometimes it just eats at me because I care so much about my babies, my clients. And if they're suffering, if they can't put food on the table, like my mission is to make sure that they can put food on the table and to make sure that they're not unhappy and their families are not unhappy. It's been a challenging year, a few years for everyone, certainly.
Do you feel that it's harder now for talent as opposed to maybe when you and I were coming up, and you could be, I came up in San Diego and the top talent in San Diego at a morning show was making, well over $1 million a year, each of them. And it was hard work. And you came in, you did a morning show every day, and there's a lot there. But that was before you had to maintain social media accounts and do blogging and all these other things now that are, I think expected of the talent. To me, it feels like and by the way, some of these big morning shows, like when I worked with Rick, you had 4, 5, 6 producers also helping with content. And now I think a lot of that's been, maybe you've got one producer and you're also expected to do, again, videos and all these different social media platforms. So is it more content and harder today than it was?
Oh, it's so hard. It's so hard. And so many people, don't actually have producers, even on some pretty big shows. There is so much being asked of the talent, but they have to do it because they have to stay relevant and they have to reach their audience and within reason,
Sure.
There is a fine balance. But I see, when we look at podcasting, which this is what we're doing today, and you're so brilliant at it, and your company is so brilliant at it. When we look at podcasting, when I look at the success, of an Armstrong and Getty or an Angela Yee or a John Batchelor, and I look at, okay, how is this happening? And is it a combination of understanding how important it is to utilize social media and to cross-promote and to be a guest on other people's shows? It's this fine balance of so many different variables, and it's hard work, but it can really pay off. So we're all trying to figure out that magic. I look at a Zach Sang, and I see, what he's done on YouTube, or, it could be TikTok or whatever it may be. I want to make sure that we're reaching everyone. We need to reach every age group. We need to be able to sell to every age group. Every age group is valuable. We cannot forget, people over 40 like myself. We cannot forget people my parents' age. We cannot forget those young people coming into the business who don't even realize that they're listening to radio. They're like, oh, I don't listen to, yeah, you actually do, because you just said you listen to Elvis Duran. Oh, yeah, I love Elvis. You listen to The Breakfast Club or Angela Yee. Oh, yeah, oh my God, Angela Yee, she's my person. Well, yeah, they're on the radio. So how do we continue to bring younger people in? We have to figure it out. And that's why I think it's so important that everyone embraces, any personality, I should say, embraces social media, embraces, if you're asked to blog. Look at Mark Simone at WOR in New York is such an unbelievable example. He is a digital whiz. If you look at the compelling content that he puts up online, and people listening to a talk radio station are going there, and they're going there in droves, and it can work in every single format. I
would say, especially being more of a music radio guy, that personality is more important than it ever has been before. And I think, in back to what you were just saying, that we do need more young people. We need to develop the next Casey Kasem, the next Bob Kingsley, the next Ryan Seacrest, the next Howard Stern, whoever it may be. And that they will not only transcend radio, but these different outlets, these different social media, whether it's a podcast or TikTok or whatever it may be, but really honing in that personality, because radio in some ways, again, making it more challenging. Not as many people work at a local radio station as they used to. It's just harder to get an opportunity. But B, we can't hang our hat on the music that we used to be able to. It really was like, if you wanted, back when I was coming up, if you wanted to hear hit music, that was really where you went, was to the radio. Now you've got a myriad of options to be able to go and get that music.
And yet everyone is listening to podcasts, and everyone wants to be a little smarter, sound a little bit more intelligent with your friends, come home to the dinner table and share something that you learned that day.
Yeah.
Everyone craves content. Content is not going anywhere. And the greatest content providers are radio, audio personalities. They just are. And, when I look at a talk radio personality, and when I say that, obviously many of our music morning shows are basically talk radio personalities. They're not playing music. When I look at them and the exciting content and the great storytelling, the information, the entertainment, the diversions that they are providing, and they're teaching me things and keeping me relevant with my friends and family, I mean, that's a gift. We both work with Matt Pinfield.
Yeah.
I always say he's the god of alternative rock. I mean, he is He is a genius. We sit down with Matt Pinfield. You listen to Matt's stories. It is a gift.
Really is.
We work with some of the greatest performers of our time. You know, I work with someone in the Hispanic space, Edgar Chaboy Sotelo.
Chaboy's fantastic.
Chaboy?
Yeah, I saw him in Dallas.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just unbelievably compelling content, and incredibly compelling content excites me. You know, I think about when you said, like, when I started out, one of my first clients, actually two of my first clients, I'm in contact with this just right now, immediately. Christine Nagy, mornings on WLTW
Christine's
in New York.
Fantastic, yes.
Amazing. And TJ Taramina, who's now doing a syndicated show. TJ started off as a producer for Elvis Duran.
He is so, well, both Christine and TJ are incredibly talented, but I listen to TJ quite frequently and just really impressed with the success. And I know Scotty Myers is now working on that show, who I need to get Scotty on because he's the godfather of affiliate relations. That man is amazing.
He is. Well, if you want to watch the funniest thing you've ever seen, TJ may have done a little spoof on Scotty, who works out 18 times a day in a very tight tank top. Usually a very bright colored tank top. Yeah. Yes. So there was a pretty good spoof, but TJ is a perfect example of using video, audio, social. He uses every platform so effectively where you're reaching everyone, and it just becomes bigger. And I don't know, I'm excited about this business. I remain excited about this business. Maybe it's because, you know, I surround myself by people who are excited about this business. I look at, you know, my best girlfriend is Deborah Parenti over at Radio Inc., the publisher, and she's going into the National Radio
Hall of Fame inductee, Deborah Parenti.
Yes, so happy. And when I look at Deborah and how she is expanding our knowledge as an industry of everything in the Hispanic radio space, everything in urban radio and beyond. I am learning so much about this industry and these young people that are getting into the industry and how crazy talented they are. You and I were both at Morning Show Boot Camp not that long ago. It was unbelievable, right, Chachi? It was really unbelievable, the talent in that room, and some of them out of work, which is such a shame. But we have some of the most talented human beings in our industry. Oh. And let's face it, if you can do a few-hour radio show Monday through Friday, come on, you can do anything. Unscripted. If you can entertain and inform for that many hours, I can't do that.
Either can I. That is a tremendous amount of work, and it takes a tremendous amount of energy. And speaking about, and by the way, your passion is infectious. I absolutely love it. We're so grateful to have you in this industry. I want to talk about your board and charity work because if this isn't enough, being a mother and running an agency, being Eric's partner and working with some of the best talent, top tier talent on the planet, you also sit on the board for the Alliance for Women in Media. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, it's such a joy. It makes me so happy. You know, when I can see a young person getting a scholarship that they desperately need. When I see, the Alliance for Women in Media, we've been around for over 70 years, which think about that. That's pretty remarkable. We came out of the National Association of Broadcasters.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yes. So we're the ones that do the Gracie Allen Awards. I believe we're entering our 49th annual Gracies, which of course really is the big awards for women in radio, television, podcast streaming, all things digital. So it's been a joy to be on this. I've been on this board for quite a few years. I was the last national chair. I still co-chair the Gracie Allen Awards with my two wonderful partners, Andy Howell from Hallmark and Mike McVeigh. And we have a great time. What's wonderful about this organization, it's about scholarships, it's about recognition, it's about programming and content. And I think we did a very good job keeping everyone connected during COVID. I'm really proud of that. But the connection is real and the education is real. And we are reaching so many women, so many people across the country. and a lot of mentoring as well. So I am incredibly proud of this organization. It's a remarkable board. Many of our friends sit on this board, and I really feel like we're doing a lot of good and actually changing lives. And I've spoken to so many women over the years who have won a Gracie, and many have said, this is the first real industry honor I've ever received, and it's changed my life. And I got a better deal as a result, or I have so much more confidence as a result. So I love that we can bring together so many women and everyone in a big way. And the content is strong. So if you are in the industry and you attend conferences, we are present at many events. We have a breakfast at the NAB. It's certainly one of the most well-attended events of the NAB, but attend a Gracie's. There's nothing like it. And the Gracie's Leadership Awards will be on November 13th in New York. Very excited about that as well. So that's one of my passions.
George M. Estabrook, Alumni Association board member.
Well, yes, that I actually stepped away from that because I'm the new president of the Hofstra University Alumni Organization Board. So I just took that over, and it's a joy. I mean, we have 140,000 alums across the world. And what a pleasure and privilege it is to represent the organization and bring more people into this spectacular university with such a top communications school, unbelievable audio program, and the best university radio station in America, WRHU.
And you just joined our friends Scott Herman and Tim McCarthy you're now on the board of the Broadcasters Foundation of America. Tell us a little bit about that organization. I interviewed Tim a few months ago, but it's a wonderful organization, and please share.
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, it's, the late Jim Thompson, what an incredible man. He introduced me to it along with Peter Doyle years ago. And this is an organization that helps all of us in our time of extreme need. So when I say that, this is for broadcasters. This is for radio and television broadcasters. What does that mean? A salesperson, a producer, a production person, a program director, an on-air personality, anyone who has worked at a station, whether you're currently working at a station or not, it doesn't matter. This is about a time of crisis. And sadly, many of our family members in our industry have fallen on incredibly hard times. People out of work without insurance, who have cancer, who have heart disease, who've had a stroke, who have an addiction issue. It could be as a result of a tornado, a hurricane, a fire, another natural disaster. People lose their homes. Recently, I received a call from a company, and I'm thrilled that the company reached out. A radio company reached out and said, hey, our person at our station was affected by a recent natural disaster, and they really need an emergency grant. Well, the Broadcasters Foundation of America gave an emergency grant immediately, and that check goes out immediately. So there are long-term recipients of grants who have been receiving grants for many years and are in dire need, and there are emergency grants for these terrible hurricanes and events, tornadoes, events that we've been seeing more and more each year. Because there is more and more need, and we are giving out millions of dollars, we need a few things. We need industry help. We need people. It could be $5, $10, $50, $100, $1,000, whatever it is. This is such a worthy organization, but we also need awareness. So I always share the same story. Forgive me for sharing the same story, but I think it makes sense. My client and dear friend Tony Zaza. He's in Florida. He's syndicated on a few Cumulus stations. And Tony calls me in tears and says, my production manager has stage 3 brain cancer. And he's in absolute tears. And he said he needs help. He just needs help. He can't cover everything. And I said, well, call Jim at the time, I think it was Jim, at the Broadcasters Foundation of America. And Tony said, what is the Broadcasters Foundation of America? That's the issue. We need the entire industry to know that the Broadcasters Foundation of America is there for you in your time of need, but please spread the word so that every single person in your cluster, every board op knows that this organization exists, so that when someone is truly in need, they know how to find us.
Great story. I really appreciate you sharing that. And obviously all these organizations are phenomenal. And I thank you for giving so much time and energy to them all, in addition to being a wonderful mom, a wonderful wife, and a terrific agent. One last bonus question for you. What would be your advice for some radio people right now that are just wondering about the future, that are concerned with some of the cutbacks, that may be looking for a gig like we saw at Morning Show Boot Camp?
Great talent will always find a home. Sometimes it takes time. Look, I have several people who, are on the bench right now, and that breaks my heart. And it may be, look, there are various reasons. It may be that people have geographic limitations. There's a lot of variables, but great talent will always find a home. Just have patience. And you still have to be there. And that's why I loved seeing, honestly, all these people who showed up at Morning Show Boot Camp, quite a few out of work, but I love that they were there. You have to be there. And you have to be at these industry events, these industry conventions. You have to shake hands. You have to shake Chachi's hand so Chachi knows who you are. You may be great in, market X, but if no one has ever met you, they haven't had a Diet Coke with you, they haven't seen you at an event, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. So have faith, be present, be involved in industry organizations, come out to events. There are plenty of events that don't cost anything that you can participate on Zoom, like an Alliance for Women in Media. We have our events that won't cost a penny online. Participate, be present. And don't be afraid to ask for a mentor. I have wonderful mentors. I am so fortunate. I'm also fortunate to be able to give back, and I have people that I mentor. And it's a joy. And let's make sure that if you don't, it's interesting because you might have a pretty significant position in the industry, but feel a little stuck or feel a little lost. And by the way, each and every one of us feel that at some point, each and every one of us. If you feel a little stuck and you feel that you need maybe a new mentor in your life or people to talk to, everybody's been through, there are many, many people who have been through what you're feeling. And in order to get unstuck, sometimes you just need to talk to other people who have had similar and different experiences. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call someone that you respect in the business and just have a conversation. And you know what? Don't be afraid to say, hey, I know you know so-and-so. I'd really love if you would connect me with them. I would love to have a conversation with them. I think I could get a lot out of getting some advice. And you know what will end up happening? Someone down the road will get a job as a result, or do a deal as a result, or end up with a great new friend as a result, or get someone else hired as a result. This industry is all about those connections and helping each other. And you know what? We really care about each other. We may have differences. We may have political differences. Whatever it may be, it doesn't matter. This industry cares about each other. Audio cares about each other.
I love that. That is so spot on and so well put. Heather, thank you. It means so much to me that you took the time to do this. I'm so grateful for all the support that you've given us over the years. You and Eric have been incredible, and we're very fortunate to work with you and in your clients, and even more fortunate to have you as a friend. So thank you again for everything that you do for the industry.
Thank you, Chachi. And seriously, you are one of the greatest humans in our business. And I love doing anything possible with you. And you do everything with the utmost of kindness. Now, you said I was a great mom before. I got yelled at pretty heavily before I got on this podcast with you, because apparently I did not buy the right ice cream. So there may be a 6-year-old and a newly turned 4-year-old who are very upset with me at the moment. I'm going to try to redeem myself. Wish me luck. It may not go that well.
They're already turning into great negotiators, I can tell.
I said to my daughter, I'm like, when can you join me? I'm ready. Come on, join me.
Thanks for listening to Chachi Loves Everybody. If you like the show, we hope you leave us a 5-star rating and tell your friends.
Make sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
This has been a Benztown McVeigh podcast production. Hosted and researched by Dave Chachi Dennis. Executive producer, Darren Silva. Producer and editor, Jake Urbanik. Show coordinator, Estefania Padilla. Marketing and distribution, Suzanne Aksu and Robbie Gessel.